Hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome to How to Choose the Right A-Levels webinar, which today will be presented by our MPW Birmingham principal, Mr. Mark Shingleton. As per usual, please, for those of you that have joined us before, could I please ask that you keep your mic on mute? You will have the opportunity to ask questions at the end. There is a chat box you will see there, so please do feel free to start asking questions throughout the presentation, and Mark and I will answer your questions at the end. Please also note that this is recorded, and we will send you a recording of the presentation and webinar at the end of the day. So thank you once again for joining us, and I will hand over to Mark.
Thank you very much, Betty. Hello, everybody from England. You won't believe this, but it's actually raining. So as I look out of my window, what a jolly picture it is. But we've got lots of pretty blossom. So my name's Mark Shingleton. I'm the head teacher, the principal at MPW Birmingham. I've been in education for over 20 years. Half of that, or more than half of that, has actually been as a head teacher. So the remit today is for me to try and give you some guidance about how to choose your A-levels. My own particular passion and interest in education relates to careers guidance and pastoral care. So this is a theme, this is a topic very close to my heart. My objective today is to not sell MPW to you. I really genuinely want to try and engage with you to give you some tips, some guidance about the best way to choose your A-levels. So that's, if you can't see me already, that's what I look like maybe 20 years ago. Anyway, a warm welcome to all of you. So let's have a little look at what A-levels are. I think this is something for all of you just to reflect on a little bit. In Europe, many European qualifications in France, in Germany, in Italy, and Spain, they have many subjects that you study to get you into university. In the UK, it's different. You actually choose 3 subjects. You choose 3 subjects, so you specialize, and that's what the British universities like. They like you guys to be real specialists in a narrow field. You would normally study 3 A-level subjects over 2 years, and you would have your exams at the end of 2 years. Obviously, at a college like MPW, we will give you testing throughout the year to make sure that you're up to speed and you've got the best chance of getting the highest grades. But your big exams, the exams which count towards your grades, are at the end of 2 years. Now, some students, you may have friends already studying in England. Some students, it is possible to study four subjects when you start your A-levels. But I have to be honest, those students are actually in a minority. The majority of students study 3 subjects. Now, if you see the slide, you'll see the word EPQ, Extended Project Qualification. I would say for the people listening to me today, I would recommend you give a lot of consideration to the EPQ. It's a standalone project, a research project of up to about 4,000 words. And I think it really gives you a competitive advantage. So you would choose a subject in your EPQ. You would choose something that you're passionate about. It may be linked to the degree you're going to study at university. And I have to let you into a really important secret here, really, that some universities absolutely love the EPQ. So some universities, if you get an A star, if you get a very high grade in your EPQ, will actually reduce the demands on you to go to university. They will drop the requirements for you to get in. Other universities, such as the London School of Economics, LSE, fantastic global university. These LSE won't necessarily expect you or put it into its offer for you, but it will like it. It will like you doing the EPQ. So things for you to think about there. Perhaps another point that's worth for you guys to reflect about, a lot of countries have what we would call a post-results system. That means you do your studies, you get your results, and then you go to university. Interestingly, in the United Kingdom, we don't do that. Yeah, the British have a reputation for doing things differently, and they certainly do that with universities. So what happens in England is you do your studies, and before you finish, we make a prediction of how you're going to do. And your offers from universities are based on those predictions. So I think the moral of the story is when you come to the UK to study your A-levels, work very hard and get on incredibly well with your teachers. Right. So I've got a couple of warnings. I've got a couple of warnings for all of you. And this is very important that you try and understand this. I've been working with international students now for many, many years. Students, parents, wider families, agents, educational representatives. And it's very, very important that we all understand this particular point. There are no government university league tables. I'm going to say that again. There are no government university league tables. And what you need to understand is that there are indeed university league tables, but they are not officially endorsed information from the British government. These league tables are run by financial companies like newspapers, the Times, the Financial Times, and the Guardian. There's also an online league table called the Complete University Guide. So I think what you've got to do, and my message to you is you have to treat the league tables which cover British universities with some caution. But if you're going to refer to league tables, if you want my honest opinion, the one I would recommend to all of you is the Complete University Guide. That's certainly the one that I would refer to. Warning number 2, and this might be a little bit confusing, but stay with me. Do not assume that universities with higher grades than other universities are better. It's very important you think about that. Many students, many international students I've worked with over the years have been seduced by the simple notion that higher grades mean that a university is superior. And that is not always the case. Normally, the grades needed to get into a British university have a relationship with supply and demand. So if you want to study law at UCL, University College London, your grades there, your grades required for that will probably be around A star AA. If you want to do sociology at UCL, the offer grades could be 2 A's and a B. And that is meant to reflect supply and demand. When you have a lot of demand for limited supply, the grades that usually go up at universities. But sometimes, strategically, universities produce higher offers. So online, they make higher offers for their subjects. And they do this because they know that psychologically, some of you guys will be impressed by that and think, oh, that must be better. And hopefully today I'm going to teach you that actually all of you listening need to become detectives. You need to become like Sherlock Holmes to find out what's really going on. So, I like going to the cinema. I like watching films. And if you go to the cinema in Britain, you will see an overrepresentation of American movies, no doubt. And most British people have heard of the Ivy League. I'm sure that many of you listening to this have also heard of the Ivy League. So the elite, prestigious universities in the United States of America, Harvard and Princeton. Well, actually, Britain has its own Ivy League. It's referred to as the Russell Group. And most British kids see these universities as the elite universities, as the universities to aspire to gain entry to. And sometimes I think that that's lost on international students. They don't quite get the importance that we attach to the Russell Group universities. So there is, I think there are 24, so you've got 24 universities. I'm obviously here in Birmingham, so you can see that that is the first university. But by and large, these are regarded as the heavyweight institutions. And when you do your research, because I know you're going to do your research, when you do your research into universities, you might find that some of these aren't coming up particularly high in a league table. Do not read too much into that. So the question you want to ask me, no doubt, is should you only study at a Russell Group university? Well, if I'm honest, it depends on what you want to study. Some Russell Group universities don't have medical schools. Some don't have dental schools. I work with lots and lots of students who aspire to really high competitive courses. And I know that my colleague, Adam Cross, has done an absolutely fantastic presentation on how to enter medical schools. But a lot of Russell Group universities don't have vet schools, pharmacy, some of these technical schools. So it depends on what you want to study. Likewise with art and creative subjects such as film or media, you might find that if that's your forte, if that's your passion, some Russell Group universities don't have provision for you. And it's also worth remembering that there are universities such as Bath, Lancaster, Loughborough, and a few others who are outside of the Russell Group University, yet in the UK have exemplary reputations. So Russell Group universities are seen as the gold standard by and large in Britain, but there are some exceptions or considerations for you when applying to university. So you're going to ask me what the best type of A-level it is to study. What are the best types of A-level to study? Well, to a large extent, it might depend on your career intentions. If you want to be in architecture, then you're going to have to study art, possibly mathematics. If you want to be a doctor, there's a good chance that you're going to need biology and chemistry. Choosing your A-levels and identifying the best type for you might actually be influenced by your strengths and interests. What are you passionate about? And what motivates you? So these are very, very important things for you to consider. Now, I want you to look at the slide that I've got up there. And this is extremely important. And this is something which is very, very much misunderstood. Now, the first thing to say is this list is taken from the University of Sheffield's website. Okay, so I've done my research. I'm trying to show you up-to-date information. But this information is out of date. So the question I'm asking you is, why am I showing you something out of date? The reality is, I'm showing you something out of date is that unfortunately many British universities have out-of-date information regarding their preferred list of A-levels. So I'm going to teach you now a trick. This is not a criticism of Sheffield University, by the way. It's a very, very good university. This is just a random example, a university which has out-of-date information. But the key thing for all of you, if you look at that list, if you want to work out whether that list is up to date or out of date, the simple test is to look at business. And if it says business studies, you will see that it is out of date. If it only records business, then you will see that it is in date. And the reason I know all of this is because in 2016, major changes were made to A-levels. And some universities, sadly, haven't updated their list of preferred subjects. I'm going to tell you now, so make a note of this. I'm going to tell you now a university which has updated its list, and it is UCL. So if you go onto UCL's website when you're doing your research, you will see that they list business. Now, this notion of preferred A-level subjects, not all universities provide this list, and some universities which do only make it relevant for certain courses. But your generation is so lucky, you are so empowered. When I was going to university, I didn't have all the information that you guys have now. But I've just given you a little tip there. When you're doing your research, you discover a list of preferred A-level subjects. If you see the word business studies, you know it's out of date. And then what you can do is you can email the university and you can actually clarify whether your subjects are acceptable. So continuing with Sheffield, and this is in line with some other universities, but bearing in mind this information is out of date, you've got a warning about combining subjects. So if you were to combine art and design and film studies, that's two subjects that we run here. If you were to combine them together, the University of Sheffield wouldn't like this. So all this information is there on university websites. I think a motivating aspect for you regarding A-levels, which hopefully you should find extremely exciting, is that it's possible for you guys to study subjects you haven't studied previously. So this is just a small sample of A-levels that you can study for the first time. And I hope, like me, you feel excited looking at this. You've got business, you've got psychology, absolutely wonderful subject, so interesting. Many international students have never studied psychology, and wow, how liberating to study such a dynamic subject in England, and you've never had to have studied it previously. Very, very exciting. Likewise with government and politics. A few years ago, I worked with a top international student. She actually had an offer from Cambridge, but she turned it down. She turned it down because she preferred to go to the London School of Economics. And two of her A-levels were actually sociology and government and politics. Never studied them previously. Did them from scratch. Was so enthused, loved learning, great role model she was. Right, so this is a particularly important topic at the moment, medicine. So I hope that all of you are keeping safe in this rather precarious climate. Certainly in the United Kingdom, we've had to reflect a great deal about the noble efforts of the medical profession. So I work with a lot of students who want to become doctors, and I am inspired by these young people. Absolutely fantastic. And I've seen an increasing trend of international students considering studying medicine in British universities. So I thought I'd share with you some snippets. So let's just randomly take Imperial College. And it's a very prestigious university based in London. You will see, you will see that you need biology and chemistry. You have to choose those subjects to get into Imperial or to have a chance. And then you have a third subject, which is random. You would choose what that subject is of your own volition. You might check with Imperial College whether they have a preferred subject list. So go back a few slides when I explained to you about Sheffield. There you've got to just check they've got whether they have a preferred subject list. Now, you'll see that in reality, any offer is likely to be A-star AA. So although Imperial are saying on their website 3A grades, in reality, it's more likely to be A-star AA. And things like that can be tricky for international students. So we'll go back to my reference to Sherlock Holmes, the detective. You just have to make sure that you do careful research. You can see from UCL, it's clearer cut, same way with King's College. Interestingly, though, we have a difference here. And it's about devil in the detail, this beautiful English expression, devil in the detail. So Queen Mary's in London, they require you to have A-star AA, but unlike the other universities, you can have biology and chemistry, or you can have biology or chemistry, and then you choose, in addition, maths or physics. So you've got a little bit more choice there. So I think at this stage, if you want to be a medic, I'd be saying to you, you will keep your options open, have more choice with biology and chemistry. If, however, for some reason, you're not quite sure, make your decision. If you're doing maths and physics, along with one of those subjects of biology or chemistry, somewhere like Queen Mary's would consider you. And then we have Birmingham, biology and chemistry. Interestingly, I said I wouldn't sell MPW, and obviously I don't want to sell my home city, but for British kids, Birmingham Medical School is one of the hardest to get into. Very, very prestigious on the medical front. So I want to share with you something, though, a trend which has occurred recently, and this is absolutely mind-boggling for me as someone who's given my whole professional life to education. You'll see there that Newcastle wants 3 A grades, but actually says any A-level subjects considered. And I'm not making that up. Absolutely true. Any A-level subjects considered. But you have to present a very, very strong and motivated case on why you want to study medicine. And there we can see Oxford, and we've got Cambridge, and likewise, they take a similar approach to Queen Mary's in the way that you could have chemistry and biology, but actually you need to have chemistry. That is a prerequisite. And then on top of that, you can have biology, physics, or maths. Now, one of the misconceptions for many international students who want to study law, and why shouldn't you? Great subject. And I would say generally, we do have some fantastic law departments in the United Kingdom. But there is a very, very interesting thing to consider here, that law doesn't require any particular subjects. So some of you may be sitting there thinking, right, I want to be a lawyer, I must study A-level law. Well, actually, that's not the case. You can study A-level law. If you look at LSE, it has its own list of preferred A-level subjects. They actually have quite a high proportion of law undergraduates who studied A-level mathematics. So as you can see, it is very eclectic. For the record, and don't quote me to get me in trouble here, the LSE's list of its preferred A-level subjects is out of date. And as I've alluded to previously, UCL's list of preferred subjects is in date. We have Bristol, another very good law school. A lot of students actually, when they're choosing law, will concentrate on London because I think they guess outside of the Oxbridge setup, Oxford and Cambridge, that law is where the most jobs are. But actually, there are a few very good, there's some very good law schools outside of London, and I've included there. So we have Bristol, Warwick and Durham, Birmingham, usually bigger cities, although Durham's very small, it has a very good prestigious reputation for law, and in general as a university. Now, if you're a student sat here listening and you see yourself as one of the best, that's how you see yourself, don't be put off by the course at Oxford because it has a different name. It doesn't say law. It is the same course. It is law, and it gives you the same status as someone who qualifies as a law undergraduate. Interestingly, though, when we look at Oxford and Cambridge, and do you remember at the beginning when I asked you guys in the nicest way possible, warning number 2, Warning number 2, don't assume that because somewhere has higher grades, it is better than another university. It could be, but it might not be. And here we have a very, very clear example. Oxford wanting 3 A's, Cambridge A star AA. And I can honestly tell you, there's no way that I would say that Cambridge is better than Oxford, and there's no way that I would say that Oxford is better than Cambridge. So the moral of the story is you really have to go into this with an open mind. You'll see that I've written that some individual colleges list preferred subjects, so you should be becoming familiar with that concept now. The trouble is that most of those preferred list subjects, you've guessed it, they're out of date. Right, engineering. This is often very, very popular with international students. And I've written a few examples here. Let's just have a little look at Leeds, if we may. Let's have a look at Leeds. Now, you will see that I have written the BENG and the MENG. And this is quite important, and this is very prestigious for many British students. The MENG actually means masters. It's a postgraduate qualification. It's something you normally do after you've got your degree from university. And very often, some universities, when they make an offer or you apply to it, if they really like you, they put you automatically into the master's stream. So obviously you have to get certain grades when you're at university. You have to reach a certain threshold, a certain standard. But many universities will give you that chance to not only get a degree, but also a master's qualification. And I think a lot of British kids and increasingly international students see this as something quite prestigious, gives them an edge in the labour market when they're applying for work. But as a rule of thumb, if you're interested in engineering, and obviously lots and lots of different aspects of engineering, general engineering, electro, chemical engineering, but as a rule of thumb, the 2 subjects that you would need to consider for engineering are maths and physics. There are differences. We have that general engineering at Birmingham. The main importance there is mathematics. And remember my rule, don't assume because somewhere's got lower offers, so lower grades to get in, that it's an inferior university. University of Birmingham is definitely a top 10 university in the UK, and in some metrics, a top 5 university. And yet, to do general engineering, 2 A's and a B. I call that, with my students here at the college, if you don't mind me sharing this with you, I call that a bargain. So if you come to Britain and you work with us, you will see we love shopping. And we have these very, very important stores, the Harrods and Harvey Nichols. Great stores, fantastic brands. And people come from all over the world to go shopping. And sometimes these stores have sales. And people like a bargain. They like to get a good deal. That's what I call that offer from Birmingham. With my students, I call that a bargain. 2 A's and a B for engineering for a very prestigious university. That is a bargain. And I think that's what I want you to do here. I want you to do your research. And when you look at the grades, don't just assume that the higher grade always indicates that it's a superior university. So let's have a little look through here. Likewise with Manchester, similar argument. Very, very good university. They want maths and physics, 2 A's and a B. That is a bargain. And then, of course, I finished at Oxford and Cambridge, and there you've got 2 A stars and an A, and they want almost identical, they have almost identical requirements. A little bit more emphasis in Oxford on the further maths, but further maths is quite sought after at Cambridge. So back to that expression I used, devil in the detail. Right, so If you've stayed awake this long, you all deserve a medal. Congratulations. It's stopped raining now in Birmingham. It's 8:30 in the morning. I can see the sun attempting to come out. But it gives me a chance now to reach out to all of you and just reflect a little bit. I want you to think now. I want you to take the time to invest in yourself, because in this particular conversation, you are the most important person. And I really, really want you to try and ask yourself, what type of student are you? So when I ask you that question, if we were meeting now in person, if we were meeting in the flesh, I might ask you to give me a mark out of 10 on how hard you work. And no doubt many of you would be giving me a very, very high score. Okay, brilliant. I might ask you, are you a considerate student to other people? And you might give me your mark out of 10. And we could go through lots and lots of different considerations. What I want to do, though, is to get you to think a little bit now about the future. What type of student are you? What are your goals? What are your aspirations? Choosing your A-level subjects is, at this stage in your life, it should be one of the most exciting and one of the most important decisions you're going to make. So let's have a little exploration together of what type of student you might be. So it's possible. This is my friend, Bugs Bunny. He's a very good runner. I like to keep fit and do exercise. He's quite fast, but I keep going, so I eventually catch him up. But are you a careerist? Do you know what you want? Now, it could be you do. It could be you're sat here and you're saying, yes, Mark, I know exactly what I want. I know what I want. Brilliant. If that's the case, I'll share a few slides with you in a moment, and you will be identifying very quickly. So if you do want to be an architect, or you want to be a doctor, or you want to be an engineer, or you want to be a lawyer, you will be having an idea now of the A-level subjects you need to study. But it may be that you can't decide on a career. It may be that you know what you're good at, but you just can't decide on a career. And why should you? Why should you really? I'm going to share with you something now that might blow your mind, okay? This piece of information I'm going to share with you now might absolutely blow your mind. Here goes. About 70% of graduate jobs in the United Kingdom are given to young people irrelevant, regardless of what they have studied at university. So over the years, I've worked with international students. They want to go to a prestigious university and they want to study history. And their parent will have a chat with me and they'll say, Mark, why study history? What can you do with history? You can do nothing with history. But actually in Britain, you can do an awful lot with history. So I think you've got to understand the British mindset that actually our goal is trying to encourage students to get very, very high grades, to enjoy their studies, and to study at the most prestigious university they can. And that's what I've dedicated my professional life to be quite honest with you. But in this situation, if you are someone who knows you're good at something, but you don't know the career, I don't want you to get stressed by it. I don't want you to get worried by it. But you should try and influence what you can control. And identifying what you're good at is half the battle there. Perhaps, though, you're someone who enjoys so many things. You just you enjoy them all. I've met students like this. I've met so many international students who have loved all aspects of their school. They absolutely love it. And they're struggling to make a choice with their A-levels. Maybe you're one of these guys. Maybe you're someone who likes learning so much that actually it feels a bit scary to reduce your choices, to just break them down to 3. Well, we'll talk about that in a moment too. And maybe you're like this. Maybe you just don't have a clue. You're clueless. Your parents ask you, your friends ask you, and you just don't know. And sometimes you feel guilty for not knowing, but why should you? It's completely normal to actually ask questions, to not always know, and you are still remarkably young. But let's just go into these into a little bit more detail. Perhaps you've got, actually, before I do that, perhaps you've got a particular profile that doesn't fit one of these descriptions. And perhaps you don't feel that it's suitable to ask me at the end of this presentation. No worries. If you have a question that you don't want to share with the audience here, all you need to do is give that question to Betty, and then she will pass it to me, okay? So I give you my word, if you want to have more customized care, you've got particular questions that you feel aren't being covered, just give them to Betty and she will pass them to me, and I will give you the best advice I can. I really thrive on trying to be neutral, impartial. I try to be very, very honest, and I will try and customize my advice to your circumstances. But let's go into this in a bit more detail. Right, so some of these we've discovered. You know what you want. You've got your carrot. You know what you want. So we have the medic, chemistry and biology. That's 95%. As we discovered earlier, University of Newcastle doesn't require those subjects. Absolutely amazing. And some places, some universities want those subjects, or want one of them with physics or mathematics. We've seen about engineering, we've seen about the lawyer. I have alluded to architecture. So it depends on the university, but normally you would have arts with maths or physics, and that often surprises people. I think you can get in to study architecture without maths or physics, but I'm going to be brutally honest. Remember that dynamic we had about supply and demand. I think some of the universities which are more popular and see themselves as perhaps a little higher standing, they will normally place an emphasis on mathematics or physics. And economics, something extremely popular with international students, and something I haven't mentioned yet. If you study A-level maths, you will have more options. But if you don't study maths and you still want to do economics, you've still got choices. So a good case study, some homework. If you're an economics person listening to this now, some homework from me. Look at the University of Sheffield's website. Very easy to do. Look under undergraduate courses. Very easy to do. Look under economics. Very easy to do. And when you look under economics, you will see 2 courses. Both have the title of economics. One which requires mathematics to get in, one which doesn't. And I'm pretty convinced that with that degree from the University of Sheffield in economics, you will not be disadvantaged if you go into the job market or want to study a master's at another university because you didn't have A-level economics, A-level maths to start with. But the majority of universities do require it. But I'm just trying to give hope to some of you who feel this pressure. Do I do A-level maths? Actually, if you do your research, if you become Sherlock Holmes, You might discover some universities, the example of Sheffield, where you don't have to study A-level math. Now, you know what you're good at, but you can't decide on a career. And I told you 5 minutes ago, don't worry, you should relax about that. I think you try and keep your options open. And I think if you know what you're good at, then my advice is stick with it. Stick with it. If you're good at science, then I would take this forward. I think it makes sense. If you're good at maths, I would take this forward. It makes absolute sense. I think you're trying to strike a balance between what you like, what you're passionate about, and then maybe you've got an eye on trying to be sensible. But I would say, go back to what I said earlier, I think if you have this particular profile and you want a little bit more specialist guidance, please let Betty know, and then you and I can have a one-to-one chat, and I'll try and give you as clear a guidance as I possibly can. So you love learning. You like it, but you just don't know what to study. And I've said to you that by and large, students only do 3 subjects. How scary, right? You've got to remember, and you have to accept, if you're this person, A-levels are about specialization. The British intellectual model wants you to be a specialist. So if you're a scientist, it wants you to be the best scientist in the world. That's how Oxbridge works. That's the British model. The American model follows a different tradition. It is liberal arts. So you do lots of little things in your first 2 years. In Britain, no. There is the choice of other options, but by and large, historically, our model has been about a specialist, to be the best. And that's what A-levels are trying to engender in students, trying to cultivate those intellectual skills. But it's still possible to get a level of breadth. If you like biology, if you like science, for example, you can stick with biology. You might combine this with history if you like essay writing. But you have to be very, very careful. 90% of you, this won't be a problem. But if you're applying to Oxford or Cambridge, by and large, they want you to be a specialist. So you might be at a disadvantage if you have an eclectic range of subjects. Conversely, London School of Economics likes you to have different A-level subjects which are a bit eclectic. So you've got to try and navigate that journey. The other thing to consider is, if you don't know what you want to study, but you love studying lots of different things, is your EPQ. So if you turn down a subject, let's say you really, really, really want to study psychology, but it comes down to a choice between economics or psychology, you choose economics because you think it's going to help you more in your career. You think it's going to help you more when you go to university. By the way, to study economics at university, you don't necessarily need it to have studied economics, but it would help. But let's say that you choose economics. You could keep your passion for psychology or your curiosity for psychology alive by completing the EPQ. Remember when I spoke about that? And you might actually do a project on consumer behavior, buying behavior, or how people react. Or do people make rational decisions when they purchase things? So you could combine an interest of economics and psychology. So I think the EPQ, I mean, certainly here, I said I wasn't going to sell the college, and my apologies if it appears like I'm doing now, but the extended project qualification, as far as I'm concerned, has been an absolute revelation. It's been brilliant. And the international students who have completed it have been so successful. Not only have they had good grades, but they've also gone on to some very, very prestigious universities. Right, let's move forward. So, poor you haven't got a clue. Your parents are telling you to do this, Your friends are saying you should do this. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? You just don't know. You haven't got a clue. Well, don't feel guilty. I think you fundamentally do have to ask yourself some questions. So if you're one of these people who doesn't have a clue, you do have to make a decision. That is the reality. There's no way about it. So this must sound very English to you. Some of my international students say to me, why do you say that, Mark? What makes you most happy? I think you have to ask this question. I think you do have to ask this question. You have to be honest. What is going to make you happy? Because if you're more likely to be happy in your studies or your job, you're more likely going to be successful. So what motivates you? You might ask very grown-up questions. Where do you see yourself in 10 years' time? It's embarrassing to admit this because Betty introduced me, so I am going to admit it. So two stories for you very quickly. Many years ago, I read that there was something very fulfilling and powerful in writing down what your goals were for the next 5 years and for the next 10 years. And I did it. And I've still got the piece of paper at home. And actually, it was fascinating because writing it down really helped to clarify my thoughts. And then when I checked against them, so 5 years and then 10 years, it was so powerful for me. And it really gave me a focus on what I wanted to achieve. And funny enough, you may not have heard of this person, Paula Radcliffe. She is the world record holder for the marathon, so an elite athlete. She visited the college a few times. She gave some motivational presentations to students, and I had a few sort of private chats with her. And she told me that one of the most powerful things she did was when she was at 18, so nearly the age that you guys, and some of you may already be 18, when she was 18, she sat down and she wrote out her goals for the next 5 and 10 years, and she's continued to do so. To the present day. She regularly updates her goals. So I think all of you, if you don't have a clue really, and even if you do, writing down what your goals are in 10 years' time, I think could be a very powerful exercise. You ask yourself, do you like working with numbers and science? Are you quantitative? Is that the way you roll? Is that what inspires you? You might like analyzing different arguments like a lawyer would, or economics do. Maybe you're creative. But fundamentally, you will have to ask yourself some questions. And as I've said, if you have things that you don't want to share with everybody and you would need more customized, bespoke answers, please just give your questions to Betty and then I will follow up accordingly. So, who's this distinguished fictional character? He's so famous that when I have 3 children at home, up until, it was a bit like Father Christmas, but they actually believed that Sherlock Holmes was a real detective. But I want you to become a detective. I so do. I think it is so important that if you have one take-home message from me in this presentation, it is for you to be empowered to do your research. So I want you to be a detective. I want you to start looking at universities now, right now, after this presentation. I want you to start looking at British universities and looking for clues, like a good detective. You're looking for clues. What are they looking for? What do they need? What do they want? So part of that research might mean you looking at documents. So this is a helpful document. I'll just hold it up to the screen there, but that is from the University of Cambridge. I put it, you get this slide anyway, but post-16 choices. So that was a helpful document, University of Cambridge. The informed choices.ac.uk document, that is very, very helpful. It won't answer all your questions, It won't probably, the risk of showing off, it might not give you some of the insight, the kind of detail that I've given you today. But as a starter, it will really help. I did say I wasn't going to sell MPW. Elementary, my dear Watson, a famous comment that Sherlock Holmes would say. But we actually do produce a lot of guidance on universities. And I have to be honest, before I worked at MPW, I've been at MPW for 10 years. And the two schools I worked at before joining MPW, both of these schools had these career books in their libraries. Absolutely true. So I think if you go to any school in England, you will find MPW books in there. That is a fact. And that's part of the reason I wanted to join MPW, because as I explained earlier, my passion, my interest in education really relates to providing careers guidance. So this leads me really on to ask all of you, do you have any questions? I mean, I as you can see, I'm passionate about this particular conversation. If some of you want more private questions answered, I'm more than happy to do that. I'm really here to try and help you. This is very inspiring for me to talk about this subject. But the floor is now open, Betty, if our students would like to ask me any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. That was a great presentation, so thank you for that. I have a question that I always get asked by agents and students, if you don't mind me asking you, Mark.
Of course.
And it's always the question regarding A-level choices and studying economics A-level and business A-level together, and the do's and don'ts of that. Could you just explain why we encourage students not to do together, or do we?
Okay, so my own personal view on that is I think there are some urban myths about combining economics and business. So if we remember in my presentation, business studies is actually not the correct word. From 2016, the A-level has now become business. And UCL offered a very good insight into this on its website about preferred subjects, where it actually implied that business was just as hard as economics, or not even harder. So that the source of that is UCL. I have no objection to any student who studies economics and business. I think the trick with it, I would say if you're applying to a Russell Group university, you will be safe with over 90%, maybe possibly 95%. What it might be prudent to do if you're going at the elite end with economics and business is to make sure that you're studying another subject which is seen as a kind of traditional A-level. So if you're doing economics and business and then you did film studies, that might weaken your hand a little bit. I'm simplifying. Some universities, though, might offer you some prejudice if you try to do economics, business, and something else. London School of Economics, for one. But I would say generally, I've worked with lots of British and international students who have studied A-level business and economics, and they've had no difficulty getting into a prestigious university.
Okay, great, thank you. And we have a question here from Rice Yasmin, who says, so I'm guessing she wants to choose the medicine route. And if she gets AAB or ABB, which medical universities, I mean, would there be an opportunity for her to go to medical school if she ends up with ABB?
Right, so that is an absolutely fantastic question. That's a brilliant question. It's a very sensible question. So I think, is it Yasmin who asked the question?
Rice Yasmin, yeah.
Yeah, Rice Yasmin, right. So I think in order to answer that question, you need to go back to an earlier slide when I said in my introduction, understanding A-levels. A-levels, when students apply to British universities, It is based on predicted grades. And if a school predicts a student ABB or AAB, then that student will not get an interview and they won't get an offer. So it's very, very important that the student attends a school which understands that, is willing to give the correct predicted grades. And then if that student gets an interview and that student gets an offer, and they are a very good student, they have a fantastic reference, they write a great personal statement, and then in reality, when they sit their exams in the summer and they underachieve, they drop a grade or two, then the situation becomes a little bit ambiguous. They may not get the offer, but from my experience, there's a chance that they might. So I don't think it's a question of saying yes or no, but what I would say is it will definitely be a no if the school you attend doesn't predict you the correct grades.
Okay, thank you for that, Mark. And another question which we do always get asked is, what are the fundamental differences, I guess, between A-levels and the IB? So we do have quite a lot of our partners here on the webinar session. And that's a question that they will get asked by prospective students as well. So should a student choose A-levels or the IB? What's the difference?
Okay, so brilliant question. So obviously, as we've established in this presentation, when students study A-levels, the default position is to study 3 subjects, and you can do the EPQ as well if you want to have a bit more breadth and just differentiate yourself. When you study the IB, you study 6 subjects. You study 3 higher subjects and 3 lower subjects. You also have something like the EPQ, but it's not a choice, it's compulsory. My own view is that the IB is a very, very good qualification. However, I think that, from my understanding, if you really love something like maths, or you really love a subject like history, you will go deeper into it at A-level. The IB will challenge you and stretch you intellectually, but because you've got to do so many different subjects, I think you compromise the detail in which you go into depth. The other thing to remember is, if you go back to the slides and I said you love everything, you love everything, it's possible that go back to that cartoon of the little dog there being patted, I think it's Charlie Brown, that might suit that candidate at the IB. But what you got to remember is at the IB, you have to do things that you might not enjoy, like a foreign language. Or if you're not naturally into science or maths, you prefer things like philosophy and related themes, well, actually, you have to do maths and science. So I think for certain, it's not for everybody. I don't think the IB is for everybody. And I think probably if you look to help that student understand, the students answer that question, if you become Sherlock Holmes and you do your research, so look as homework, look at this. Look at the University of Cambridge and look at the University of Oxford. If you look at the A-levels, they're almost the same. You might get differences, 3 A's or A star AA. If you look at the IB, there are light years. There's a gulf of difference. Generally, Cambridge wants 42 IB points, which is incredibly high, and Oxford, 38. Some courses will take you at 37 in the IB. If you go to Edinburgh, they want 42 for the IB, whereas King's College London wants 35. The reality is that British universities don't really understand the IB. That's the biggest disadvantage, because they don't get it, and they prefer A-levels because A-levels fit that tradition of British specialism. So,
okay, great, thank you, Mark. And we have a question from Sayon Yun, who says, if a student is really capable, would you recommend 4 A-levels rather than 3 A-levels with EPQ?
okay, so another very good question. I think it's very important for that student to understand that in reality, universities do not make offers based on 4 subjects. They will only make offers based on 3 subjects. So the student in question would need to think strategically about what they hope to gain from doing 4 subjects. It is true that statistically, a lot of students who get into Oxford and Cambridge have done extra subjects. Not all, but there is a high proportion. So if I was working with that student, I would just be very honest. I would ask questions. Do they understand the workload? What are their goals? What are their objectives? They could start with 4. And if they began over the journey of their studies to conclude that it wasn't sensible or pragmatic, they could actually drop one of those subjects to go down to 3. So I think it's a careful decision. You have to be very pragmatic, because no offer is based on 4 subjects. The offers from universities, even at the elite end, will be on 3 subjects.
And Mark, and just a question related to that, we have from Andy. So obviously, would you recommend a student who is unsure about their subject choices to do 4 subjects in the first year with a view to dropping 1 in the second year? So like we do with most of our international students who choose 4 subjects. Mm-hmm. So is that a route you recommend for the students that are unsure?
Yeah, I think that is possible, that somebody could do 4 subjects just to keep their options open. If they're really finding it difficult to make a decision, then that's an option. But what I would say, I mean, I'm certainly not adverse to that. What I would say, though, is that the EPQ actually has a little bit more gravitas than some of my international students realize before they come to the UK. But if we go back to that example where someone really can't make a distinction, psychology or economics, that was the example I gave, yes, of course, they could start with 4 subjects.
Okay, and I think just on that, it's obviously with MPW, we do obviously give the students, international students, the opportunity to study 4 subjects in the first year, with a view of obviously them dropping 1. And it's at the interview stage that we would obviously look at the EPQ, and once they have the academic discussion as well, kind of then having a clear study plan for students should hopefully kind of help a student with the subject choices that they're going to make. So I will just wait to see if there are any more questions. Mark?
Yep.
I think that's it.
Okay, fantastic.
So thank you. Thank you very much. I will leave you with the closing remarks.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, to allow me to have this opportunity to discuss A-levels. I appreciate it can be a daunting time, but actually, I hope that you feel positive and energized and excited, because it is an exciting time. And feel free to ask further questions if you would like to. And I wish all of you the best of luck, and I hope that you all remain safe and well. So look forward to welcoming you to the United Kingdom in the not too distant future. Thank you very much, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, Mark. And just a reminder, we will send the recording and the presentation to you. And just a reminder for our upcoming webinar this week, that we do have a A-levels versus foundation webinar on Thursday at 12 o'clock UK time. So please do join in if you can. Stay safe, and we will see you soon. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.